Have you ever been hungry? I mean, really hungry? While he was hunting big game, my dad once drank water from an elk track. He wasn't particularly thirsty. He just wanted to be able to say that he was once so thirsty that he was forced to drink water from an elk track. He told that story for many years. I grew up in poverty, although I didn't know it at the time. When I was a kid, we ate the same simple, inexpensive meal every day for a month. I just assumed everybody else was eating baking powder biscuits too. I didn't know any better. Twice while I was on speaking tours, people forgot to feed me. I was polite, so I didn't make an issue of it. Still, after not eating for more than 30 hours each time, I was feeling the hunger pangs. If you've seen me lately, you know I'm not missing many meals. However, abrupt, irreversible climate change underlies hunger for a lot of people. According to the July 29, 2024 headline at Grist, 1 in 11 people went hungry last year. Climate change is a big reason why. The subhead reads, quote, "Hunger and food insecurity are no longer merely benchmarks of public health. They are symptoms of a warming world," end quote. The opening paragraph of the article at Grist tells a haunting story. Quote, 1 in 11 people worldwide went hungry last year, while 1 in 3 struggled to afford a healthy diet. These numbers underscore the fact that governments not only have little shot at achieving a goal set in 2015 of eradicating hunger, but progress toward expanding food access is backsliding, end quote. The next paragraph indicates the interconnected nature of multiple factors. Quote, "The data, included in a United Nations report, also revealed something surprising. As global crises continue to deepen, issues like hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition no longer stand alone as isolated benchmarks of public health. In the eyes of the intergovernmental organizations and humanitarian institutions tracking these challenges, access to food is increasingly entangled with the impacts of a warming world," end quote. How could it be any other way? Abrupt, irreversible climate change influences virtually every aspect of life on Earth. For more than 8 billion people, there is no escape from abrupt, irreversible climate change. Millionaires aside, securing clean air, potable water, healthy food, a roof over one's head, and a comfortable bed on which to sleep have become privileges rather than expectations. Although I haven't had a decent night's sleep for a few decades, I appreciate it when it occurs, or when it did occur. Maximo Torero Cullen, chief economist of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, said in a briefing, quote, "The agri-food system is working under risk and uncertainties, and these risks and uncertainties are being accelerated because of climate change and the frequency of climate events," end quote. He called it a, quote, "problem that will continue to increase," end quote. He also pointed out that the increasing effects of global warming on food systems create a human rights issue. Why is it a human rights issue? The millionaires I mentioned a few seconds ago tell the tale. They aren't hurting for food. Starving people tend to be poor. And until you've skipped a few meals because of poverty, I doubt you'll be able to fully understand. I wouldn't wish such poverty on you, of course. However, such life experiences can lead to significant wisdom. The aforementioned chief economist of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization calls the food crisis, quote, "an unacceptable situation that we cannot afford, both in terms of our society, in terms of our moral beliefs, but also in terms of our economic returns," end quote. Why is it always about the money, regardless of the topic? Is it not adequate that the food crisis is, quote, "an unacceptable situation that we cannot afford, both in terms of our society, in terms of our moral beliefs"? Is that not enough somehow? Grist hammers away at economic disparity by pointing out that food insecurity in low-income nations, where more than 70% of residents struggle to buy sufficient nutritious food. Meanwhile, the number for wealthy nations is 6.3%, compared to the 70% I just mentioned. If you were born in the so-called first world and you haven't expressed gratitude to your parents for your location and timing of birth, then now is a good time to do so. Another low light in the Grist article indicates that more than 1/3 of the human population could not afford a healthy diet. This is comparable to what occurred during the last major global food crisis, which transpired during 2008 and 2009. There is no mention of the exploding human population contributing to this issue. The article in Grist points out the importance of climate change in contributing to food insecurity. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, climate change is second only to conflict in affecting global hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. After all, climate change disrupts food production and supply chains via extreme weather events such as droughts and floods. Climate change also promotes the spread of diseases and pests. It also causes people to migrate from areas being made increasingly uninhabitable as a result of floods, storms, rising seas, and other outcomes resulting from climate change. The chief economist of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization asked the question, quote, "What happens if we don't act and we don't respond?" End quote. He answered his own question. Quote, "You have more migration. It will empower more conflicts because people in hunger have a higher probability to be in conflict because they need to survive. And that will trigger also a bigger frequency of conflicts." End quote. In other words, he is pointing out a self-reinforcing feedback loop involving food insecurity, conflict, and hungry people. Well into the article in Grist is mention of a state of disaster in the African countries of Zambia and Zimbabwe because of drought. A food research scientist at the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture said she saw long lines of people waiting to buy food, with quotas on how much they could buy. She said, quote, "Imagine not being able to know when or if you will eat. That's the impact of climate change." End quote. If I haven't mentioned enough sad expressions yet, the article closes with the saddest of them. Nigeria has the second largest population of malnourished children in the world. The chief of nutrition for UNICEF Nigeria commented on what will happen if governments, NGOs, and the private sector fail to come together to address the underlying causes of hunger, food insecurity, and malnutrition. She said, if these groups fail, then vulnerable women and children worldwide will bear the brunt of their failure. She said, quote, "What keeps me up at night is the numbers I'm seeing. As human beings, we have to eat to live, and if we cannot eat, then the consequence is sickness and death." End quote.